Hey everybody, Michelle here from the Autism Moms Potty Talk podcast, and I am here with one of the coaches in the masterclass. So if you didn't know it already, I am a parent of a child with autism, and I am a life coach, and I run a group coaching program for parents of children with autism called the Champions for Our Children Masterclass. And in this masterclass, we help with anything related to autism, and that's what I had started it with. But as it's grown in size, and for the years that we've been doing it now, we tend to focus on three core problems in here, and you guys already know about it because I talk about it already a lot on the podcast. The first one is potty training, the second one is communication, and the third one is reducing problem behaviors. So I wanted to just say thank you for everyone who has supported the podcast. We're at over 700 downloads. We started about a month ago. So I think that's just pretty amazing. I had no idea podcasts were like a thing, and I guess they are. And it's another way for me to help as many families as I can. So thank you for supporting that. And I couldn't think of the first person on my team. I said, I'm going to have every coach that makes the masterclass possible on the podcast. I'm going to interview every single one of them, but I knew I wanted to start with this lady because this lady has been with me since I started this day one. So I want to welcome Stacy Warner. Thank you for coming, Stacy. I appreciate you being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited.
So I guess first, let's tell everybody how we met and what you do and all that good stuff.
Sure. So we met, I was a BCBA for Juliana when she was 4 years old, insurance based. So I came into the home, and I'm trying to think what year that was even. What is she, 9 now?
She was born in 2012. So that would have been 13, 14, 15, 16, about 2000. I think you were here when she was 3 going on 4. So it was
Yes,
about,
I think she was 3 going on
okay.
4.
Yeah, 2013 to 4. No, sorry, no, 2000, I'm terrible. 2015 to 2016.
Okay, yes. So I worked with Juliana for a year. I think this was right about the time that she was starting to talk. And we were potty training. I think she was just about fully potty trained when I started working with her. And it was really exciting because this was about the time she was going to preschool as well. So I remember also our behavior technician, us having to get special permission for her to go into school with Juliana. And that was really great experience too, because not only were we then working with her in the home and working on those skills, but then also getting to work in the school and work on socialization and things like that. So it was, I think, a really important time for Juliana, and also, really fun time for us to be working with her too.
Yeah, and when I remember back to this, because now that's, I'm not saying it's commonplace now. It's still kind of a unique situation when we can get an RBT to actually be able to go into the school, but that was like unheard of back
Right,
then.
right.
And I got the original special education school she was in to agree to allow the RBT to go there. She went there for about, I want to say 6 months or a year, and then it was time to move on. And then I actually found a private preschool that would allow the RBT to go there. And Stacy was a part of that whole process because she was the supervising BCBA at the time. And it's just very interesting, that whole experience, because I crafted a lot of unique scenarios to make that happen, which is very funny because if I think about that ability, and then now I created the masterclass, which is going on 3 years. I was telling Stacy that we were setting up the time that we were going to do this podcast interview, that we have been running the masterclass for 3 years. So before we get into that, I want to know about your experience. So outside of being one of Juliana's, she was one of Juliana's former supervising BCBAs. What else was like your experience? How did you get into this role of being a BCBA, and maybe even explaining what a BCBA is for people who might not even know what that is?
Sure. So I was a baby BCBA when I started with Juliana. I had only had probably my certification for, I think, 2 or 3 years. But so a BCBA, for those that are unaware, is a board certified behavior analyst. It's a national certification across the United States. Us being in New York State, we also require certain states, not all 50 states, but there are certain states that require a state license as well. So I'm also a licensed behavior analyst in the state of New York. I used to be a licensed behavior analyst in Massachusetts because I did also practice there. But just to kind of I guess a crash course in what a BCBA is we are master's level practitioners that are specialized in applied behavior analysis, which is the number one most proven method for working with children and adults on the spectrum. Tons and tons of research has been done. We are basically scientists. A lot of people say it's in the realm of psychology, but ABA is actually a science. So that's a really, I think in a lot of my masterclass calls, I like to remind parents that it's a science. Like, yes, we have a lot of history and psychology, but we are a science because it's data collection and the specific techniques we use that are proven to teach, a lot of children, as I'm sure a lot of the parents listening know, is your child might not learn like other children. So we have ABA, which has a lot of different techniques like discrete trial training and a task analysis and all different ways that we can teach your child. So I feel like that's a kind of a crash course in what ABA is, and you'll learn more in the masterclass if you are a part of it, because I like to do my little ABA PowerPoints when we're starting our masterclass calls. But I guess history of my experience, I started not knowing what ABA was at a place called the New England Center for Children in Massachusetts because I went to college in New Hampshire. I was a pre-med bio major. And when I don't even know if you know this, Michelle, when in my junior year of college, we did spring break alternative, like volunteer weeks. So I didn't go home for spring break. I went and I volunteered. And my junior year, I went to a residential school in Maryland for people with special needs. I had never worked with the population before. I was scared. I didn't know anything about people with special needs. And that week was, at that point in my life, the best week of my life. Like, I had such amazing experiences with these children, and I really formed a bond with them in just a week. And I went back to college and I changed my major to psychology and did my thesis in psychology. I was still I was still in the bio department, but I kind of got special permission because I was like, I don't want to be a doctor anymore. But I still didn't know what ABA was. I just knew that I wanted a career in this field with, this population. So I graduated college. I did AmeriCorps for a year. Wow. And I went to a residential school in Pennsylvania for people with special needs because my thought process was, if I want to do this for a career, I'm going to live with this population 24/7. I lived in the house with them because it was residential. I worked 6 days a week, 12 hours a day, and we did everything from self-help skills, showering, toileting, meal skills. Then I went to school with them. We had a vocational program, but this place wasn't ABA. So it was a residential school though, and I loved it. It was amazing. So then I finished my year of AmeriCorps and I went to the New England Center for Children, which was, I learned what ABA was there. They are, for those of you that haven't heard of the New England Center, then one of the number one, not even residential schools, just like day programs in the United States for people with autism and related disabilities. I started in the residential program. I had an intensive 6-week training on what is ABA, lectures, role playing, everything you can think of that teaches you basically how to practice ABA. And then they throw you into it and say, here you go, here are the students. And I worked with children with severe problem behavior, self-injury, aggressive behavior. We were trained to do protective holds and things like that, so the children didn't injure themselves or others. And I spent 5 years in the residential program, kind of working up the ranks. And within those 5 years, I got my master's degree in ABA through the New England Center, and they paid for it, which was even better. So I would work during the day, go to classes at night, and it was a really great experience because what I learned in class, I would then go and do the next day. So it was an amazing experience. And at that point, I was like, guess I know what I'm going to do with my life now. I'm getting my master's in ABA. I want to be a behavior analyst. My last year at the New England Center, I worked in the home-based program, so that was early intervention because I also have a really big interest in the babies and EI. So that was when I got my BCBA within that year. So I like to say that I'm a very well-rounded BCBA, that I've worked with children from 18 months old, and now I'm working with adults over 21 from 15 and up. So I got my BCBA, came back to New York, and here I am. I've been at a lot of different agencies, getting different experiences. And now for the last 4 years, I've been working with adults, teenagers and adults, on vocational skills and things like that. So I always say, I toot my own horn in the masterclass a lot, that any question you ask me, I've probably encountered it in my career. And it's, I've been a BCBA for 8 years. There's people that have been a BCBA for 20 years, but I do feel pretty happy with the experiences I've had and been able to really help people answer lots of different types of questions.
Amazing. And I just want to hit on this really quick, and then we're going to dive into like what the master class is and what do you think about this and all this stuff. Now that you've been here, I've never asked her any of these questions. She has no idea what I'm going to ask her. But first, you had taken that 1 week of volunteer service at spring break, and that made you want to leave pre-med and go and do this work. What was it about that 1 week that made you want to do that? Like, what was it?
It was the experiences that I had. Like, it was a very sappy experience. Like the connections that I formed, having really never, which I feel like is weird to say as like a 19, 20-year-old kid, I'd never really interacted with somebody with special needs before. So I didn't know anything about them. And it was, everything from autism to Down syndrome to just different developmental disabilities. And having gone in there with a blank slate and just interacting with these children, whether it was just a social gathering or going into the classroom with them, and just their I don't know, their sense of self and their personalities. It's very far from, ABA, where we're like data collection, and I think that's what makes me a great BCBA, is I can form those like personal relationships and be silly and like, kind of have a better feel of, their sensory issues and what are they thinking about. And then I could turn it into data, so just it all started there, that I could, see these kids and, maybe see the issues that they were having, but also see them as just kids having fun. And I think that's what we forget a lot about, children on the spectrum, is that they are just kids. That's the big thing. Kids first, autism second, so that was kind of what started it for me.
And I love that about that. And if you guys can't sense that from Stacy's energy, when she walked into our house the first time, I was just like, I could exhale, because she loves children. There's no hiding that. And there's something about that when you're looking for people that want to work with your children, that you want to feel that chemistry between the practitioner and yourself, obviously, but also that there's a connection between the practitioner and your children. So I think that's huge. And I'm sure it's coming through in the way that you're talking. And so much so that you love children so much that you switched majors and that you just wanted to do this and help our babies thrive. And I appreciate that. Okay, so now I want to talk about this crazy idea I came to you with about 3 years ago, saying, hey, Stacy, I'm going to be starting this program where I want to help other parents of children with autism, and I wanted you to be a part of it. So why don't you tell everybody kind of like how this all started and what your thoughts were? Did you think I was nuts? Did you think this was crazy and this wouldn't, like, what did you think? So let's give us all the scoop.
Because this was COVID, right? Where we were in the midst of COVID here.
Yes.
And I mean, I thought it was a great idea, because especially it being COVID, and people weren't getting in-person services. I think, honestly, even if it wasn't COVID, with the population that we reach of people that don't have access to ABA or living in remote locations, either way, it's I think a good idea. But definitely when you reached out to me, I was like, like, what's your plan? Like I've never done a startup or anything before, so I was like, yeah, sure, you're doing the hard work and I just get to talk about what I like to do and help people. So you had the hard job, and I was just like, sure, cool, let's do it. I like to talk.
Yep. And when we started, I only vision I had was that I identify myself as like this master problem solver. I can solve any problem. And I'm not formally trained in ABA. I'm not. Everything I've learned is through the hard knocks of seeing it done in my life and seeing what happens when I don't do it this way. It just makes life a lot easier. I feel like ABA, I always say, is like, I feel like our BCBAs are like, they speak the fluent language of our children, which is behavior. And when you learn that fluent language, then you can teach your baby anything. In fact, you can teach any baby anything.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't matter. We've had kids in there with dual diagnoses. We've had kids with global developmental delays. We've had kids with all different types of things. I mean, the majority of our families have children on the spectrum, but I just believe in behavioral therapy so much that it could just help any human being. It's just, for me, it just resonates with me. So when I started this, I had the vision of, I'll just help them answer any questions. What seems to happen is I have this belief that if we can give children on the spectrum, no matter where they fall, no matter how severe their autism presents, if we can give them 3 foundational skills, their chances of living an independent life are increased greatly. And that's potty training, communication, and stopping problem behavior. So believe it or not, even though we solve for everything in here, we kind of deal with all different types of issues. A lot of the resonating things that they come to us really fall in one of those 3 categories. So when we started this, I think I was going to host a call as a mother who would have her input as to how I would handle it if they were my baby. And then we had Stacy, and then she had we alternated days with another BCBA, Courtney, at the time, and they would go back and forth. So what was it like those first couple of weeks when we just started this and we had no idea really what we were doing and how we were going to make this happen? What did it feel like for you? Did you think it was like going to fall apart? Did you think it was going to work? Did it feel special? Tell me what you were thinking.
I mean, I think it definitely felt special because I had never experienced anything like this before, and I hadn't really heard of a program like this before, So I remember Courtney and I kind of collaborating, and we, of course, worked together at the time. So we were like, what do you think it's going to be like? Like how many parents are going to be there? What are we going to talk to them about? And we kind of just were winging it per se initially. And then we obviously got more organized and we kind of planned, and we're following up week to week. But those first few calls, we were definitely, I'm great at winging it. I'm just like, ask me a question. It's in my wheelhouse. But it was still definitely a little nervous the first few times of, I want to help these people, and I want to be as prepared as I can be.
And can we help them, because it was all virtual, and that was always
Right.
going to be the nature of what I would offer. And then COVID just happened to happen at the same time, so it just was, I guess, fitting. But like, what did you think about, like, I guess when you first started coming into it, listen, I'm just going to come on, I'm going to answer questions, but what did you start to feel as time went on when you started to see people getting results?
I mean, it's an amazing experience because I am that person that I'm always like, remote isn't great. It should be in person. I'm a strong advocate for that. But, in the masterclass, we have very dedicated parents that, I think a lot of the times in my career, parents don't want parent training. Other than you want a parent training. That's great. But like I've experienced so many families that they don't want parent training. Just come work with my kid. And if you don't want parent training, I can't teach you what we're doing with your kid so that you're also doing it with your kid. Whereas in the masterclass, some of these parents, this is their only option. So I see them with their notepads, they're writing down exactly what I'm telling them to do. And then we're like, I give them their homework assignments. Anybody who's been on a call with me, I give you your homework assignment on what you're working on that week. And it was, it is a great experience to come back the following week and be like, hey, how did it go? Do we need to change anything? And they're like, no, it's working really well. They peed on the potty, they stayed dry, they're speaking a little more, they're saying more, and that's with dedication and, parents with consistency, those are the results that we see, whether it's remote or in person. So that's what we've been really lucky to experience.
we've got big now, so that we have like a rotation of BCBAs. And we have another program called the Accelerator that gives more like private access to have their own BCBAs. But what I think has been really interesting, and I want you to talk on this too, is that when you're out in the world working, this is a very different set of parents, because it's almost like, it's hard to explain. First, I guess, talk about the importance of generalizing a skill. So let's say you teach the baby something in session. By the way, the masterclass is purely for the parents. It is not, kids are not involved in it at all. Because my belief is, if I teach you, you teach them. And not only do you teach them what you came for, whether it be potty training, communication, or stopping a problem behavior, but we use pretty much the same principles to teach all skills. So when you leave the masterclass, you leave a very different person, because now you're equipped with the skills to teach your child anything. So why don't you talk about like why it's so important to generalize a skill? How often do you see that outside of the masterclass, and how does it make a difference in the quality of life moving forward for the family?
Sure. So the first thing is to define generalization, because that's one of our big ABA terms.
Yes.
And I always say in my calls, like, I'm going to tell you the ABA, lingo, and then I'm going to tell you the normal lingo. And basically, generalization is just, we are picking one location where we want the child to master a skill, and then we want them to do it in every single location with every single person in their life. When we do generalization at my job, we do it by setting and we do it by person. So, I work in a clinic-based setting. So once they master it in the clinic, we generalize it to, we have different locations. So we go to different locations, then we go to their home and we say, all right, let's see if it generalizes, because I shouldn't have to reteach it, because if the child knows the skill, they should now know it in this location. But we have to teach the parents how to do it, because they've maybe done it. That's also generalizing to a person, so if they've done it with a BCBA or an instructor or a teacher, we then need to teach a parent to do it. Like we did this when I worked with Juliana, and we were working on like her meal skills and getting her to eat her veggies and her yogurt. So she would do it with myself and with the instructor, and then we had to get her to do it with mom and dad, and that's the same thing. Is maybe initially in the sessions, we're having the parents with the instructor, but really what we're doing in the masterclass when we're talking about generalization is a lot of the times talking to the parents, like, depending on the age of the child. Are they at school? If they're at school, let's talk to the teachers, because we need them doing the same thing that we're going to be doing at home. Because if we're doing two different things in two different locations, there's no consistency and you're not going to see progress. But if we're doing the same exact thing where we're seeing progress already at home, especially, when it comes to potty training, then we're going to see the progress at school or at grandma's house or at dad's house or wherever. So just getting the child to complete this skill with different people at different locations. Then we got to go into the community and teach them how to do it there. And it's just so important to see the mastery of a skill.
Yeah. And here's the thing too. And it frustrates me, because we're in an area that's very abundant with support for parents of children with autism. And I didn't know this. I kind of thought there were lots of places, even just in the United States, that had the support that New York has. But as we've serviced families all over the world, including all over the United States, it's not the case. So I think what happens here in the metro area is that you're like, oh, parent training, how good could this be? And then it's like such an eye opener for my BCBAs, because most of them came through Stacy. So everybody I found is pretty much through Stacy. So except for Armando, who I found on my own, who I love, we're gonna have him on too. But I think that there's just, parents can be pretty shitty here. Like they don't think that they need to learn, or they're just tired, or they may have like kind of given up on like a life where maybe independence could be possible. I try to like understand it, because that's not the people that come to the masterclass, and that's not how I operate. But that's what gets the results. It's not just about having the therapies in place. It's now about carrying that through, because they're only here for a certain amount of time. This baby is with you like 24/7. And if you want to generalize a skill, it doesn't count if he's only doing it in therapy. If it only doesn't count if he does it for Stacy or he does it for me, he's got to do it for you. And if you're not in belief that that's a life, a better life is possible, or that could happen, or you're not willing to see that through, then you just got to understand the consequences that come with that is so heavy. It's just, I mean, that's why the masterclass just blows my mind every day. They blow my mind because of their commitment. And they're just like me. None of us have been formally trained in behavioral therapy. Stacy has, we haven't been, but because we apply what we're taught, and we are consistent, we're committed and consistent to get the results. That's why I have a 100% success rate for potty training in that program. You join this program, nobody's left without a potty trained child. The only time I could say that maybe hasn't happened is if somebody quits. And that's the only thing you can't do as a parent of a child with autism is quit. We got to try lots of stuff. But when you come to this program, you actively participate in it, you leave with what you came for, which is a potty trained child. And that goes for communication. And that also goes for reducing or eliminating problem behaviors. So I think it's just like, it's been such an eye opener for me too, because I think we are spoiled where we live. And I think a lot of the families that Stacy and some of the team have been experiencing don't have the level of commitment that the masterclassers do. And that's the only type of people that we have in the program. People like, I'm willing to do anything to help my child have that chance to an independent life. Right? Because when I think about it, like, I'm going to die one day. And this is what kind of got me out of my own shit about this. Who's going to take care of Juliana when I'm gone? And I can't. There was something about that thought that just kind of got me out of my own shit and said, let's go. We got to really figure out how to help her. And it's not just getting her the therapies, that's important too, but also I need to be able to help her too. Because what if one day, and I never take anything for granted, right as Juliana was leaving early intervention, the law came in, and that's how that insurance was to cover ABA, and that's only available in the United States. We've got families now in the United Kingdom, Ireland, Zimbabwe, Australia, Nigeria. We've got so many places that don't even have, this is all they've got. That's why I take this so seriously, and so the work we do is so important, because that's how powerful it can be. If you learn this, you teach your child, you can change their lives, change your lives. Has that felt like, have you felt like that being a part of this program, like what made it so special?
Yes, for sure. Like I always ask, like when we have a new parent in the program, I always, one of the first, I say, tell me about your child, but also tell me where you're from, because I can tell by the location if I'm all they have, and I'm giving them 100% no matter what. But I also will be able to gauge their dedication. And like I said, everybody's very dedicated in the program. But, when you have a family from India that doesn't like know what ABA is, but knows it's going to help their child and is willing to do whatever I tell them to do that's going to help their child, it's a really great experience to see them, like I said, with the experiences I've had with parent training around here, where parents don't want to help. They don't want to do their part. And then we go to the master class and they've got that pencil and paper and they're writing it down. And then week to week, we're following up and they're seeing progress. And like they're telling me that they cried, when their child peed on the potty for the first time. It's really fulfilling on, my point, because I'm helping them and I'm getting that great experience, but they're getting the better experience of seeing their child make progress.
So let's talk about the two scenarios here, because you live in the world and work in the world of where we are, where there's a lot of parents that don't want to partake. And then you have the master classers. So you live in a world where some of my master classes don't even have access to in-person therapy, and you can actually provide in-person therapy, but parents aren't on board. Do you see a difference in the progress that's reported in both scenarios, and why do you think that is?
Definitely. I mean, I think what happens when when you have so much access to ABA for your entire life, I think the parents get a little spoiled. they really rely on us to take care of their child. For some parents, it's babysitting. It's free babysitting for them. You got your copay and that's it. You're great. It's cheaper than a babysitter. And they're just have been getting it, depending on the age of the child. They've been receiving ABA services for a long time. And they're like, all right, time for ABA. Bye. I'm going to go, do whatever I need to do. And when it's time for parent training, they're like, oh, I don't have time for it. And, number one, I have to be the bad guy a lot. And I have to tell parents, like, if this is insurance based, it is, mandated by insurance that I provide parent training to you. And number two, I pull the Debbie Downer card a lot, like you kind of pointed out, where, I always give them the disclaimer and I'm like, listen, I'm going to be a Debbie Downer here, but you're not going to be here one day. And we need to be working on these skills with your child to get them more independent in their life, to lead a better life for them. And you need to be helping them do this when I'm not here. It can't be 2 to 3 hours a day we're working on these skills and then never again until I see you the next day. Like there needs to be carryover with the parents. And, going from an ABA rich upbringing to parents with the masterclass that haven't experienced that, they are very willing to participate because they have not gotten that in their lives. And these are the parents that deserve to have had an ABA rich life with their child, because they would be the ones doing parent training and seeing all this progress with their child. Whereas a lot of my families, you don't see as much progress because the parents aren't willing to participate.
And let me I just want to give a wake up call to everybody, because right now, I believe that the continual rise of sick children is the pandemic, the ignored pandemic of our lifetime. And that as long as the numbers go up, that means that the requirement of care, the amount of children that will need services increases, right? When Juliana was born, it was 1 in 66. As of today, it's 1 in 44. If we don't figure out what's going on and that this keeps rising, that means that we all have this amount of ABA, including the people who have it in these abundant areas like New York and California, right? And we're going to have more kids that need that same amount of services and not enough service providers for them. So we don't want to get to a catastrophic state, which I already feel like we are now, and not know how to teach our kids because we think that we're just entitled to services that I think will always be there, because that might not be the case. Even now, Juliana is one of Juliana's RBTs. Christina, Christina, because Christina was Juliana's first RBT under Stacy, and she just got her license to be a BCBA. We're having a heck of a time trying to fill it because there are so many families in need and not enough people to support them. So even for the families that are in the masterclass, you already know it. You already know the value in learning this for yourself. But for anyone who's listening who has the access to therapies, if you don't think that it's important that you learn this, you couldn't be more wrong. Because if the numbers keep going the way they are, that standard that you're very comfortable having may be taken right from you. And if that's not an option, then who's going to be there to help your baby? And who's going to want and desire for them to win better than their mother or their father or their parent or grandparent or whatever the case may be? So I think this is just such a good conversation to have. I kind of went in a different term, but it's such a good wake-up call that, like, you can't depend on the services that you get through insurance. They could be gone tomorrow. That could happen to any of us. And if that happens, are you going to be ready to pick up where they left off? Right? Do you feel that way too, Stacy?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And I mean, the staffing issue is an issue everywhere. Not only are the diagnosed children going up, the amount of diagnoses are going up, but also agencies are short-staffed everywhere. So there's more kids and there's less providers. People, I don't do it for the money, but it is a career, and people aren't getting paid enough money, especially our RBTs. The salaries are very low, so it's really hard to get people into the field. So we're short-staffed, and everybody I talk to in the master class is saying, my child got approved for hours, but they don't have an RBT, or they're not getting their full amount of hours. So thankfully that's where we come in, where we can kind of help with that until they get staffed. But it's definitely a problem that we can't. When you have services, you can't take them for granted, because you can lose an RBT at any moment and then have to wait for another one.
Yeah, oh, definitely. That's why it's so important that we just not take anything, even if we have abundance right now, for granted, because it can be taken any time. All the more reason why you need to learn how to teach your baby yourself.
Mm-hmm.
But okay, so let's just wrap. So in the beginning of the master class, when I started, it was 2 calls a week. It was me one night and Stacy the other night, or Courtney. We'd go back and forth. And now it's grown. I think as I started to take more families on, and tell everybody on average, like, how many people are on your calls usually. It could be from as little as what to as many as how.
I mean, in the beginning, it could be as little as 3. Now it's about 5 or 6 per call, as many as like 10 to 12,
And we have
because
multiple calls a week now,
yes,
just to kind of
yes.
service, because we've gotten so big. And do you feel like you could still help and love and support everybody?
Definitely, because a lot of people come on without questions, and they know that their questions are probably going to be answered within the call. So if there's 10 people there, maybe 5 people are going to ask a question, and then somebody will type in the chat, "Oh, you just answered my question. I didn't even have to ask it." So we're still able to help everybody, and everybody is like always very patient for their questions, and we get to everybody.
Yeah, we get to
But
everybody.
it's everybody's great.
I love it. All right. So we started off, it was me, then it was you for a call. Now we have a mindset coach. Do you know what they do, Stacy? Have any idea? Like, have you heard how they're helping the moms in the
Yeah, I go in on a few of the calls every once
Oh,
in
I
a
didn't
while, and
know.
I don't
Okay.
listen to the whole thing, but when I see, like, I remember I used to watch Stella every once in a while, and it's definitely not my wheelhouse, which is why she's great, because I get into the nitty-gritty ABA, and then the mindset coach will be like, "How does that make you feel?" And it seems to be really helpful for the parents.
Right. We want to give you guys the support. You all come in very specific goals. I want my kid pie trained. I want my kid my communicating. But believe it or not, the ability to do that, it's kind of like the inside joke, is the ability to do that, or the skills to do that, you already know. It's the belief that's lacking. So that's why mindset, believe it or not, is a big part of this program, just as much as the tactical, because I was in the belief of I was this master problem solver. I could solve for anything, including autism. You know a shit about it, that like, right, I've got to figure this out for her. And I've spent many years believing I'm a problem solver. I've created results believing I'm a problem solver. So I was going to figure that out for Juliana. We can't, if you're not feeling that way about this, and you're trying to potty train, you're feeling really depressed or sad about the diagnosis. And Stacy, I got this from Stacy. Stacy said that a lot of parents look at the diagnosis and think it's cancer, and it's not. There's an opportunity here and Armando's a great example of that. Armando's one of our BCBAs. It's always nice to have a male teacher in the program, because we have a lot of boy families, but he's also an adult with autism that didn't speak till the age of 7. And Juliana had language and lost it. We had to reteach her everything. This is what's possible. Armando's living an independent life. Juliana's going to live an independent life. Why couldn't this be possible for all babies? And I need to get you in a mind frame to not see this as a death sentence anymore, but to see like, well, maybe I could create a really amazing life, and she could still have autism and that be okay. Sound good, Stacy?
Yes, amazing. I mean, I didn't know. I knew that Armando was on the spectrum, but I didn't know he didn't speak until he was 7. And there's so many cases like that. And you have to start those services early.
Yeah, and Armando didn't even have any of this shit. Can you imagine? It would have been a very different life for him. But he believes so much in what we do. And I could tell you, just from what I've experienced and what Stacy could attest to this too, for all the experiences that we've had in the master. We have family from Pakistan who her daughter was saying car. She hadn't said one word, said car within a couple of weeks. This is what's possible for all of your babies. Mm-hmm. But I got to get you on board to believe that before we can give you the tactical to kind of give you the rocket fuel to make that happen. So yeah, so just to give a recap, masterclass started with just me and Stacy 3 years ago. I think we started with 5 students. I think we're over 100 now, and actively enrolling. It's amazing. We have my call, we have Stacy's call, we have a mindset call, we now have specialists. It's become like this really complete, like I call it, my circle is complete now, because now we have a dietitian that's an autism mom, we have a speech language pathologist that Kosa calls, she's an autism mom, we have an OT now, and we have a feeding specialist. So we try to kind of really anything you could possibly have for autism, we've got you covered. But I'm so happy I had this opportunity to interview Stacy. Would you be? I want to do another one. Would you be willing to do one? I want to do one just all about ABA because I think there's a lot of like shit out there about it. And just like any therapy, I'm gonna end it like here. We're gonna have Stacy back on. We're gonna talk about what ABA is, why it got a bad rap, and why you should do it. It's absolute. I'm obsessed with it and love it. And you learn it yourself. You teach. You can practice it however you want when you learn it yourself. But just like any other like practice out there, there could be a doctor that sucks at being a doctor, but we don't throw out the practice of the science of what he teaches. So just like with ABA, I'm not questioning or disagreeing that there are adults now with autism that may have experienced rough experiences with it, but that doesn't mean we throw out the whole science based on a couple of bad practitioners. So I think we'll leave it at that, and then we'll bring this up to a whole other podcast interview. But it was a pleasure talking today. I'm so honored to have you in the masterclass with me. We're going on 3 years. This is crazy.
I know. I'm so happy to be here. It really has grown into something beautiful, and I'm happy to be part of it.
Awesome, Stacy. See you guys next time.
Bye, everybody.